All right. Ready to dive into something pretty crucial for understanding how the world works.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Power dynamics in the 21st century.
Yeah. And especially if you're, getting ready for the UPSC exam,
Sure.
international relations, all that.
Exactly.
This one's for you, but really for anyone who, just wants to understand how the world works a little bit better.
Totally. And we're going beyond just like who has the biggest armies and the most money.
Right, right.
All the obvious stuff. We're going deeper, like all the surprising ways that countries and even people can have power on like the global stage.
The subtle stuff, yeah.
I love that. I'm intrigued already. Okay, so our listener sent in some super interesting stuff for us. A political science text that like really digs into how traditional ideas about power, are being challenged.
Well, yeah, for sure. And that's a good place to start, I think.
Oh.
This text, it lays out that classic realist perspective.
Okay.
Which is like, military might is king.
Mm-hmm.
Countries are always like fighting for security and survival.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But even the text, it like knows that this view is kind of outdated.
Okay, interesting. So why is that? Like, if it was all about tanks and bombs, wouldn't the countries with the most money, the most weapons, like, wouldn't they always be in charge?
Yeah, you'd think so, right?
Right.
But it's clearly not always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes using too much military force can actually, like, make things worse. Like to think about the war on terror, for example.
Yeah.
The source material, it argues that the Bush administration, at first they really relied on military, like, intervention, and it actually might have made anti-American feelings stronger and even, like, helped terrorist groups in some parts of the world.
Oh, wow. It's a really, really interesting point.
Yeah.
It makes me think about all the times we've seen, like, powerful countries really struggle to get what they want just by using force.
Right.
So, like, what are we missing here? What other, like, forces are at play?
Well, the source material, it points out how important economic power is becoming.
Okay.
The neoliberal argument, they call it. Basically, global trade and, countries depending on each other more and more, it's making war a lot less appealing.
Yeah.
And way more costly.
Makes sense. It's bad for business.
Exactly. Exactly. So economic clout, it's becoming kind of the new weapon of choice.
Okay. So instead of battles on, like, an actual battlefield, we're seeing more battles, like, economically.
Yeah.
Like trade wars and sanctions and stuff.
Exactly. Think of it like a chess game. High stakes.
Okay.
Countries are trying to, like, outsmart each other using tariffs and trade deals, access to markets, all that.
It's like that old saying, right? The pen is mightier than the sword. But in this case, the pen is like a trade agreement.
Right, right.
Or a really well-placed tariff.
Exactly.
Okay, but wait. The source material, it mentions something else, too. Something called soft power. What is that all about?
This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, good. Soft power is the ability to influence other countries not by, like, forcing them or paying them, but by attracting them, persuading them.
Okay.
It's like winning over hearts and minds, not conquering land.
I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But I need, like, some concrete example.
Sure, sure.
How does a country actually do soft power?
Okay, so think about the global influence of, like, Hollywood movies.
Okay.
K-pop music, even like fashion trends.
Yeah.
These things, they shape how people see a country. And if people around the world, they develop a positive view of your culture, they might be more open to your political ideas too, your foreign policy goals.
So it's like if people love your movies and your music, they're more likely to see your country as like a good guy on the world stage.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just pop culture either.
Okay.
It's about a country's political ideals and values too.
Right.
Think about like the appeal of democracy and human rights around the world.
Yeah.
Or a country's reputation for like providing humanitarian aid, promoting peace. These things can create a lot of goodwill and influence.
So if a country wants to be like a major player in the world, they can't just show off their military or their money.
Right.
They need this soft power thing too.
Exactly.
Okay, this is making a lot more sense to me now.
Actually.
And it's definitely more complicated than I thought at first. But the source material, it also mentioned like a feminist critique of this whole hard power, soft power thing.
Oh, yeah.
It suggests that maybe focusing so much on military and economic power, maybe that's like a kind of a
masculinist way of looking at things.
A masculinist way.
Yeah. It's a point that comes up a lot in international relations.
Okay.
The feminist perspective, they argue that this focus on like power over, it's rooted in like a traditionally masculine worldview,
Okay.
and they propose an alternative, power with,
Power with.
which emphasizes things like collaboration, nurturing, building relationships.
So it's less about like dominating other countries and more about working together to like reach shared goals.
Exactly. And this idea of power with, it can be a really powerful way to understand how countries can have influence through things like diplomacy, multilateralism,
Yeah.
international cooperation.
Okay, wow, this is giving me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But how does a country actually build this soft power? It can't just be as simple as like making a couple good movies, right?
No, it's definitely
Well,
more complicated than that. I mean, the key factor here is globalization.
okay.
With everyone like more connected, people are exposed to way more information, more perspectives from all around the world.
Right.
We're constantly forming opinions about other countries based on their cultures, their values, how they act on the world stage.
So in a way, are you saying that like the internet and social media, they're huge amplifiers for soft power?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
They allow for information and ideas to spread so quickly, which can, change global perceptions in an instant. And we can't forget about the spread of democracy itself,
Well, yeah, good point.
which relies a lot on soft power things,
Okay.
persuasive leaders, appealing political platforms.
This is all so fascinating. We've got military power, economic power, and now this whole idea of soft power.
Right.
But before we move on, are there any other cons of power at play in international relations? Have we covered it all?
That's a great question.
Ah.
And it takes us to like a whole other level of analysis.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that power, it's not like fixed.
Right.
It's always evolving.
Mm.
And there are these emerging forms of power out there that are challenging how we traditionally think about influence in the world.
Okay. All right. I am officially on the edge of my seat. But
Mhm.
before we go any further, I want to remind our listeners to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with anyone who might be interested in this stuff.
Yes, please do.
International relations. We'll be right back to explore these emerging forms of power, what they mean for the future.
It's going to be good. Welcome back. We were just talking about how hard and soft power can, work together.
Right.
And how even those who, aren't super strong militarily or economically can still have that soft power.
Yeah, like the Vatican or the Dalai Lama.
Exactly.
It's amazing how influential they are, based on their moral authority.
Right. Spiritual leadership.
All that. Who had a huge army or like tons of money behind them.
Yeah, it really shows you how powerful ideas and values can be in shaping like global opinions.
For sure.
But as we move further into this century, there's like another layer to this power thing.
Okay.
The rise of what we call non-state actors.
Non-state actors. Okay, break that down for us. Who are they?
Yeah, good question.
And how are they like changing the power game?
So non-state actors, they're groups that have influence on the world stage, but they're not, your typical countries.
Okay.
Think about international organizations like the UN
Okay.
or huge companies, multinational corporations
Okay.
like Google, Amazon,
Right.
even some really powerful NGOs
Mm-hmm.
like Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders.
Okay, got it. So they have power and influence, but they don't have their own armies
Right.
or control a specific territory like a normal country does.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how these non-state actors, they're kind of messing with the whole hard and soft power thing we were talking about.
Okay, I see.
For example, a big company, they might not have like an actual army,
Right.
but they have so much money, so much economic clout that it's like they're rivals with some countries.
Wow.
They have a lot of sway in international affairs.
So it's almost like they're using economic hard power, even though they're not a traditional state.
Exactly. It's like they're playing the game with like a different set of rules.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And when we talk about soft power, think about groups like Greenpeace or Human Rights Watch.
Mm-hmm.
They might not have tanks or missiles,
Right.
but they can get public opinion on their side. They shape the stories we hear, and they put pressure on governments.
Yeah.
And that can be really, really powerful.
It's like they're using public opinion as their weapon,
Exactly.
which makes me think about what we were discussing earlier with like social media and online activism and how that plays into everything.
Absolutely. That's a total game changer, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Platforms like, Twitter, Facebook, they let people and groups connect and organize and share their voices globally
Mhm.
in ways that were, like, unimaginable a few decades ago.
So are you saying that anyone with a smartphone and a Twitter account has some power now?
In a sense, yeah.
Hmm.
Think about movements like #MeToo or #Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
They started online,
Right.
social media made them huge, and they ended up having real-world impact,
Wow.
changing conversations, influencing policies.
That's an incredible example of how the internet can really level the playing field
Right.
and give a voice to people who haven't had one before.
It's
It's
exactly.
almost like digital democracy or something.
Yeah.
People can come together online to demand change,
Right.
hold the powerful accountable.
And it's not just social movements either.
Okay.
Think about, like, citizen journalists and bloggers
Mm-hmm.
and the role they play in, like, shaping the story during conflicts or political stuff.
Yeah, okay.
They give you that on-the-ground perspective that sometimes challenges the official story,
Right.
and it changes how the whole world sees what's happening.
It's like we're seeing a new kind of people power emerging,
Yeah.
thanks to technology and the desire for, more transparency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More accountability. And for someone studying for the UPSC exam, understanding all this is crucial.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Imagine an essay question asking you to, like, assess how social media affects foreign policy decisions
Mm-hmm.
or impacts the outcomes of conflicts. You'd need to analyze specific examples, connect online activism to real change in the world.
This is all so fascinating. It feels like the old rules are being, like, rewritten right in front of us.
Right.
But with all these different kinds of power, hard power, soft power, economic power, online activism, non-state actors, it's getting pretty complex.
It is. It is. The whole landscape of power is becoming way more intricate,
Yeah.
more multifaceted than ever before.
Hmm.
And that leads to some really important questions.
Okay, like what?
Like, how do these new forms of power work with the old ideas of hard and soft power?
Right.
How do we even measure, like, how effective online activism is in creating real, lasting change?
Mm-hmm.
Can everyday people actually hold governments and big institutions accountable? These are big questions.
Yeah.
No easy answers.
Right.
But they're at the core of understanding how the world works today.
I'm definitely getting that aha moment you promised. This is giving me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that this isn't just about passing a test, is it?
No, not at all.
Understanding this power stuff, it's important for anyone who wants to be an informed and engaged citizen of the world today.
Absolutely. It's about understanding how things work, how decisions are made, and how we can make our voices heard
Yeah.
in this crazy, complex, interconnected global system.
Right, exactly. This is a real deep dive. And honestly, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
We'll be right back after a quick break to go even deeper into these evolving forms of power
Stay with us.
and what they mean for the future of international relations. And hey, if you're liking this discussion, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We're back. And before the break, we were getting into how the whole landscape of power is changing.
Right. With, non-state actors and even regular people having influence in ways we never saw coming.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It really highlights that power isn't like a fixed thing. It's constantly shifting and changing.
Totally. And for those listening who are prepping for the UPSC exam, understanding all this is super important.
You got it. A deep dive into this could really help, nail a high-scoring essay on how international relations are changing,
For sure.
or the role of these non-state actors in global governance.
It's not just about the exam, though.
No,
It's
definitely.
about understanding the world, right? The news, the choices our leaders make, even our own part in shaping the future.
Couldn't agree more. It's about being informed, engaged citizens in a world that's, well, pretty complicated.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's zoom out a bit. Big picture time. What does all this mean for the future of power and influence globally? Like, what trends should we be watching for?
Well, one thing's for sure, technology is going to keep playing a huge role.
Mm-hmm.
AI, cyber warfare, social media, as those things change, they'll create new ways for people to use their influence, for good or bad.
So it's almost like we're entering this new era of, like, digital power, where, controlling information online becomes just as important as having a big army or a strong economy.
Exactly. And that brings up some serious ethical questions. For policymakers, everyday people, everyone,
Yeah, yeah.
how do we make sure this tech is used responsibly,
Right.
ethically? How do we protect ourselves from like manipulation and fake news?
Mhm.
And how can we use this technology to actually make things better, promote democracy, human rights, sustainable development, all those things?
Big questions. I bet those are going to keep people busy for a long time.
Oh, for sure.
But let's bring it back to our listener. What are some key things you hope they take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest one is just remembering that power has so many dimensions. It's not just about military or money. It's about culture, ideas, values, connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
And as tech keeps changing the world, understanding all these different forms of power is going to be even more important for navigating the 21st century.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, a huge thanks to our listener for sharing their source material and joining us for this deep dive into power dynamics. It's fascinating stuff. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world around us. Until next time.